Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm doing a video for the Paint Couture creative team. For my project today, I'm going to be using this little tin that I had in my stash. Originally it had some hot chocolate in it. I thought it was a really great shape. I'm going to be using IOD's Autumn Cottage Mould, and I'm also going to be using Paint Couture's Rapid Casting Resin. I've got my gloves on and I'm going to start pouring step 1 out into a silicone cup, and then I'm going to pour out the exact same amount of step 2 into the same amount. So I'm just using the measurements on the side as a guide, and then I'm going to stir it really well with my little wooden stick there. So I'm going to be stirring for about 30 to 40 seconds to make sure it's really well combined, and then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to start pouring it out into the pumpkin mold. So I'm going to be using the pumpkin and the wheat design, but I do like to pour out extra into some of the other designs in that mold so that I've got them in my stash for future crafting. You can use a clay if you like for this particular step if you aren't a fan of resin, but I really love using this rapid casting resin. It definitely makes crafting very easy. While that's curing, I took out Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in white. I'm going to be laying down an even coat, then letting that dry for about 30 minutes and then coming in with a second coat. I was trying to be quite careful on this surface. I wanted to keep the gold toned bottom and top rim on this piece. I didn't really want paint on those sections, so I am trying to minimize the amount that I'm getting on there, but I can go in with a wet wipe and remove that excess before that primer is completely dry. And of course I'm going to be doing the lid as well. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Simply White chalk paint. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this over the top of my 2 coats of dry primer. So the primer underneath is going to do a few things. It's going to make sure that my paint here sticks really well to the surface. It's also going to help block the text that's printed on this particular tin. I couldn't get that covering off, so we're just working with it and using the primer to hide all of that. I'm laying down white because I am going to be using decoupage paper. The paper that I'm using today is called Fall Tartan. It's by Roycycled. Here I'm just measuring exactly how much I'm going to use, and then I'm going to cut it to size. I thought that the colors of this particular design went really well for fall crafts. I'm then going to be using Paint Couture's Decoupage Medium in Shine. I'm going to begin at the seam on the back of the tin there. I'm laying down a generous amount of that decoupage medium, and then I'm going to be picking up the decoupage paper and lining it up with the seam that's already there. I'm then going to gently press the paper into that decoupage medium. I am going to be using a water mister here to dampen the paper. This helps the paper to stretch. It also helps to get a bit more of a smoother finish. I'm just using my fingers to start off with to get that down into that decoupage medium, and then I'm going to be using a ball of cling wrap to help me smooth it out without damaging the paper. So I'm working in sections here, laying down a certain amount of product and then smoothing that paper down. Also using that mister here and there again to help that paper stretch and smooth it down. I think it definitely is best to work in sections when you are dealing with a surface like this. It's a lot easier to position the paper and the product in sections, because as you can see, I am having to sort of reposition it here and there, smooth it out. I'm not going to be able to get this perfect. I am going to have a few little wrinkles just because of the shape of this particular container, but that's okay. It isn't very obvious. I'm also wiping off that decoupage medium from that bottom rim because I don't want the paper to stick there. I want to be able to see that beautiful gold rim, and it's also going to be a little bit of a gap up the top and down the bottom, again because it is that sort of cylinder shape, but that's okay. Once I get to the end of the seam there where I'm meeting up with the other side, I am going to just double check how much I'm going to have to trim off, and then I'm going to try and neatly cut that excess paper off. I don't have the product down yet to finish this off. I want to trim this off first, and then once I have, I'm going to add some more of that decoupage medium and then smooth that paper down. I let my paper dry completely and then I came in with a craft knife. I'm going to gently run that around the bottom rim of my container so that I can trim off that excess paper. So I am trying to be careful not to do any tearing. I have let this dry, but there can be a few tricky areas here and there. So just go really slow. My craft knife is quite sharp as well, so it's going to make separating these sections a lot easier. So I'm just going to gently pull away that excess paper. I next went in with another coat of that decoupage medium in shine to seal up my paper. Moving on to the resin castings, I'm going to take them out of the mold. It took about 10 minutes for these to turn white and be completely cured and ready to go. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Cozy Beige chalk paint. I'm applying that over the top of the entire pumpkin. I'm going for a bit more of a neutral look with my castings because there is so much color going on with that beautiful tartan paper, but obviously you could bring in some other colors if you prefer your piece to look a bit more colorful. I'm then going to move on to painting the wheat design that's going to sit underneath our pumpkin, and I only ended up doing one coat on each of these. I didn't need them to be perfect, but honestly this is quite a highly pigmented paint anyway, so it got the job done. So once I was finished painting the resin pieces, I decided I would also paint the lid in that same cozy beige. As I'm going to be putting this on a curved surface, I took out my hairdryer, I've got it on high, I'm heating up the front and the back of the resin piece so that I can reshape it to be a bit more of a curved shape. So I'm just checking here how it's going to go and just continuing to manipulate it until it's the shape that I want it to be. I'm also going to put the lid on briefly so that I know where to position it. I'm using my Gorilla Super Glue Gel on the back of the wheat pieces first, but I am also going to be using my hot glue gun as well. So the super glue is going to be that permanent hold, the hot glue is going to be that immediate hold to keep it in place. So I'm just adding some of that hot glue there. I'm then going to position that down the bottom, leaving a little bit of room on the bottom section. And then once that's in place, I'm going to repeat the same process on the pumpkin. If I had to do this over again, I would cast the resin piece closer to the time that I needed it, because I did have to fight with the resin piece a little bit because it is such a curved surface. So if you're going to do this, I'd recommend that you cast it just before you're going to need it so that it's still fresh and easier to bend around that curved surface. Next, I took out Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin. I'm going to be using this to seal the lid of my container first. And then once I've got that all sealed up, I'm going to move on to adding it to the pumpkin and wheat details. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description below. I'll just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. When the clear coat was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Antiquing Glaze. I'm going to be using that over the top of the pumpkin detail there first. I really want to use this glaze to not only give this piece a bit more of a vintage look, but to also really highlight all of the beautiful details in these resin molds that we have glued down. So I'm just painting those on. I'm then going to be using a wet wipe to pull it back from the high points to really show the low points, and as I said, all of that beautiful detail. This is an optional step. If you don't like a grungy look, then you can definitely leave this out, but I think this glaze also lends itself to that beautiful fall and Halloween type craft. So I'm adding it to the wheat detail down the bottom, using a wet wipe to pull that back. Now you could still see some of that white peeking through underneath, so I'm going to go around the top rim and the bottom rim as well to deepen that tone, disguise that white a little bit more. And then I ended up going over the top of the entire project as well. This is going to hide any little imperfections and give it a bit more of a sort of vintage look, which is definitely what I'm going for with this project. Once I finished adding it there and wiping it back, I then added it to the lid as well, repeating that same process. And here's a look at our finished fall container. I think this turned out really sweet, and I think it's the perfect fall decoration. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you hit that like button, comment, and share it out. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of the videos from the Paint Couture creative team. Thanks for watching.